But what I wanted to do in this session is really give an overview of a few key checks that clubs can do in their Sport 80 account, that if you do them now, when the club renewal process opens next week, we'll just make that process a really, really simple click through. So the aim was to try and stretch things out and just make things a little bit easier that way. So I'll share my screen so you can see what I'm doing on there. When I've got it shared, I'm not going to be able to see if there's anything that pops up in the chat, or if you use the hand raise emotion. So if you just need to interrupt to ask something or to go over it, just do it. That's absolutely fine.
Okay.
So let's get started. Here we go. And I suppose the only other thing I'll maybe add as we're doing, as we're running through all of these, it can be quite hard sometimes to get that balance in an online session right for those people who perhaps feel really comfortable with the system, those who may need a bit more support or may not use it particularly regularly. So I'm not sure where you two sit within that window. So if I'm saying stuff and it does feel really overwhelming or anything like that, just to make you aware, I do offer one-to-one sessions as well. So if you need a bit more sort of dedicated time to go through anything, then we can do that. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So the big thing that clubs are able to do ahead of next week is to have a look at who is listed as holding the different committee roles and has access to the club's account. Now, this particular page of the club's account is only visible to somebody that has a club super admin role. So it's this is almost very much a reserved use section because it's a type of updates that the secretary would normally make and sometimes the chair as well. If you don't have club super admin, that's fine, because like I said, I'll share the recording of it so that whoever does have that role within your club's account, then I'm more than happy for you to pass the recording on to them and they can have a look themselves and at this particular section that we're going to run through now.
Okay.
So on the club's profile, over here on the right hand side is where our active roles are listed. And for renewals, there are 4 particular roles that we ask clubs to tell us about. So we need to know who is your secretary, who is your chair, who is your welfare officer, and who is your treasurer. And it may be the case you already have those listed. It may be that some of them are there and not others. Or it could be that we're a bit out of date and that there's been an AGM since the last time that you did that. So as you can see, if we just have a little look on mine, you can probably, the first thing you'll notice is that, I've got a multitude of different people with different roles on here. So we've got a couple of club super admins, great role for the club secretary to have, and for the club chair could also have. We then have the club secretary role. Now, this is a role that does catch people out a little bit, because you almost have to separate it in part from being the secretary versus what this specific role allows you to do in the system. So club secretary will obviously tell us who the secretary is. But if you've got somebody else on your committee and you need them to be able to do similar-ish things to the secretary. So you need them to perhaps process memberships, check details, look at range registrations, perhaps they're adding your Have a Go and course registrations. Club secretary is a good kind of generic admin role as well, that just helps for those people where their Club Sport 80 role may not give them any access at all. So when you come to look at your profile page, if you've got a few people listed with Club Secretary on it, don't panic, because for some of those people, it's probably there for admin access purposes. You know, it's not a case that they're there because we think they're all the secretaries. So what we'll do, whenever we're editing any roles, we're on our profile page and we click on the Edit Profile button here. And the first tip I would give whenever we're bringing things up to date is you're always going to add whoever is in a role before we start taking roles away. And the reason that we always recommend that is that every now and again we have an instance where a super admin has come in to hand over their roles to somebody else, and they've taken their own roles away first of all, and then of course they've revoked their own access. So they can't add the new ones. So you're always adding before you're taking away. And touch wood, it's a fairly, I'd like to think, intuitive process, as long as you know the one particular trick that's there. So we're going to add roles to add somebody in. Obviously, it's self-explanatory. If you're adding the role for yourself, you just leave it as yes, and you select what you want. So there's, as I said, there's a whole host of them in there, but for what we're doing for renewals, we're going to focus on chair, secretary, treasurer, and welfare officer. So I will, just for the sake of today, I could click on, say, club treasurer, and if I click submit, it will then, I'll have to have a look, but it will then add me here onto this list. And if I've added a role for myself in error, then you just come to the three dots to the right of it and click on delete contact, and that will knock that role off. So let's do it for somebody else, because this is where the trick lies. So we're going to say, no, it's for another member of the committee. And as you can see, it opens up into a host of information we need. So let's take a similar approach and we'll say we're going to add a treasurer. And now I'm going to fill in this detail for one of my colleagues. And the trick with all of this information is it needs to match what's on that person's account in the Sport 80 portal. So if you vary the information on there, so for example, sometimes someone's Sport 80 account is in their full name, but if they're known by a nickname, I've seen it where people have put their nickname in, and then when it's submitted, it's created a sort of rogue account with that role attached to, rather than it attaching it to their actual membership account. So that's your big trick to doing this. Just make sure that you're using what's on their account. So I tend to do it, I have a second tab normally opened here, to make it easy to flick between. So I'll get my person up, and in this case I can just bob around through their different sections and steal bits and pieces of the information to go in effectively. So we'll take Robert's membership number and I'll paste that, and then I will come back, and you don't have to cut and paste, you can just type it in if you need to, but I will just cut and paste the email here. Okay, and then I know he's a Robert, and then so that I get any spaces right, I'm going to cut and paste that part as well. There we go. And let's pop his date of birth in, 3rd of Feb 90. So 3rd of Feb 1990, and then I'll submit. There we go. And when we come on screen, now I've clearly added Rob, club treasurer, before because that's why he's got 2 now showing. But if I was to look on his actual account and come into the roles section, I can see exactly now when I've added these different roles for him. So clearly I did one at a session last week and I've given him another one today. Okay. And again, if you ever add one in error, you just come along, click the 3 dots and delete contact. So what we do is we just make sure we've got every role in that way if it's somebody new. And once we've done all of our adding, we can start taking away any duplicate roles from there. So we'll say for the purpose of this, I've added Rob a club treasurer. So let's say he's no longer a secretary. So I'll take that off. So it is relatively nice and straightforward to do that and to get the people that you need to make sure they're listed correctly. Once you've got them listed, it might be a case that you want to think about at that point, do they need any admin access granting, or is it enough for them to just be listed at this point? Because again, I know that I speak with some clubs and they have a few people who are involved in doing the admin on their club's account. And then I speak to other clubs and they tend to just have one main person doing it. So I don't want to be prescriptive with saying who should and shouldn't have access, because that's quite a personal decision for each club to make. But certainly in the context of the roles we're looking at, when you add a club chair or a club treasurer or a club welfare officer, those roles don't automatically come with any admin access. So if you do want those people to be able to do anything within your club's account, you need to add a second role for them, which will give them that access. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for a club chair, that could be a club super admin role. That's your highest level of admin access, which is really perfect for somebody who has that overall responsibility. For your treasurer, there's a role called club finance admin, and that will give them admin access, meaning they can see members' details. They could help with dealing with renewals. They could run reports on who's renewed, who hasn't. I suppose, you know, those kind of activities in there. So it really is a case of just thinking there about what will work for you, and then going from there. And if you ever want to have a conversation about what types of roles might suit what you need people to do, just drop me a line and we can run through that. So now we've got our roles up to date, we can just click save at the bottom, and that will bring you really nice and up to date in terms of what's on there. Now, there are 2 other things that we need to do within our profile as well to make sure it's up to date. So the first is the person who's named as your primary contact still up to date? So primary contact tends to be the secretary or the chair, but I have known in some other clubs, depending on who their main administrator is of the account, sometimes that person will be named as the primary contact. And primary contact means they will get most of the automated emails relating to the club. So they will get reminders about ranges that need renewing. They will get notifications if somebody selects to join your club. They will get payment confirmations. And if we have specific communications that we want to get out to clubs, very often we use the primary contact as the main point of contact for that. So it's just a case of thinking who is going to be best suited to have it holding that particular role and being the recipient of those emails.
I just have a quick question on that.
You can, yeah.
So I'm thinking of membership here. So
yep.
Somebody's joined, as you say, somebody's put in the club to say, I want to be a member.
Yes.
What you've just said, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Because shouldn't it go to the club secretary, whoever's
So
nominated? Because otherwise it could be
yes.
outside the committee.
So it should be so that whoever is named as the primary contact can only be a committee member. So it
But you've
wouldn't
just said
be
it could
just
be anybody who
anybody.
does admin.
Well, I would expect that the only people doing admin on the club's account would be a committee member.
Right.
That's
Okay.
sorry. So I should have clarified that before. When we're talking about these roles and who's doing the admin, the expectation is that, you know, it's a
Right.
member of the committee, and you've obviously, you know, you've all made your decisions on who does what. You've got your understanding of your roles, and of how you're managing those datas and splitting things between you. So yes, so in that regard, it shouldn't just be an ad hoc person.
Right. Okay.
I mean, our usual recommendation is that it's the club secretary.
Yeah.
I know of at least one club where they've chosen to have their membership secretary on there. Really, you know, for that reason, just so that they're able to receive those notifications. But I suppose for most clubs, it's that one person that's getting them is really going to be responsible for making sure those notifications reach the right committee member,
Yeah.
or
Okay.
are discussed at committee meetings together. And I suppose in that regard, that's why it tends to be secretary, because they're normally that kind of organizer of all things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. We'd really love if we could to find a way where, you know, perhaps there was a way for the primary contact to be perhaps more of a generic club email address, you know, so that the committee as a whole is able to see those things come in. We're really keen to explore what our communication routes could be and how the platform could be enhanced to work better for clubs, to be honest with you. But
So I mean,
as you
for
can imagine,
me,
it's a work in progress.
absolutely, yeah. For
Yeah,
me, I'd like to, particularly for the membership notifications, I'd like it to go to the chair, the secretary, and the treasurer.
yeah.
So it's almost a distribution list, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And do you know what? I often say to people, one of the beauties of having things like this is that the more people tell me what would work for them means the more I can then feed that through to the Sport 80 developers. And when we get the demand going as well, it really helps to justify that there is a need for, you know, for change to be made. I think we've kind of moved over the years past that stage where one person used to really do everything,
Yeah.
and we're now very much in the, you know, this is a team of us all working together, so we want to get the information out to where it's going to land best. And yeah, I just feel like when it goes to one person, what happens if they're poorly or something unexpected happens? So I think we've
Well, our
got
last
scope.
secretary disappeared to New Zealand for 6 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, yeah, exactly. When those kind of things
Yeah.
happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's an area where we've got scope to really see what we can do there. But I imagine anything we do will take time to do,
Yes.
to be
Okay.
honest. But yeah. Sort of similarly tied in with this is, down in this general information section. This here is the, if we needed to send anything to you in the post, then we would need to have a postal address, for the club. And what normally happens is whoever's the primary contact would normally put their address in this section, so they would then be that sort of coordinator of anything. It's quite rare we have to send things in the post, but it's good to know, for us, and by updating it, just make sure we're not sending anything to perhaps somebody who might have stepped down from their role and, you know, really is not the right person to have received that for the club at all. These are again both nice and straightforward to update. They're done again through this edit profile section. And what we'll do is, we'll do the primary contact first. So primary contact is updated through this same section here. and you would go to the person who is becoming the contact. So we'll swap it from Rob to myself. You click on your three little dots and you set as primary contact. And it's as simple as that. And now I'm showing up at the top, and I'll just show you an extra little bit to be aware of once we come out of this profile. What we'll then do is we'll move along to the next screen. So we don't need to worry about that. We'll skip along to the next one. This is where we update the postal address. So the best way to do it is always by popping an address in the postcode search finder, and then we will let it see what it comes up with. And it's come up with some very fictional addresses there. They are not in line with my postcode at all. Right, let's try that again and see whether it can't manage this time to get the right ones. There we go. There we go. That's more like it. We've got the right postcode. So you just postcode in, select the address that matches, and then we'll click save. Now, our postcode, our address will update instantaneously. The trick to be aware of with primary contact is the first thing it does, it can immediately recognize who your new person is, but the system just takes a little bit of time to catch up with updating the email and any other contact details that is on that person's account. It normally takes, I would say, around about 20 minutes for it to play catch up on there. So I suppose the key message here is if you change the primary contact and come to look at it and it looks like this, don't panic. You've done everything right. There's nothing more you need to do. It just needs a little bit of time to catch up with itself, and then it will just automatically update the information that's showing on there. Right. That's my big section anyway. That's our key. That's very much there. If you do nothing else, that's the one that's worth doing. So, and in fact, that actually covers a couple of the ones I wanted to go over. So that's even better. So our next thing we'll have a look at is we're going to have a look at our range registrations. And that's really, I think for the most of the time, that's just going to be a case of clubs going, are they still up to date? Because I'd imagine if you've had a new one, you've probably already added it. But you know, if you do have a brand new range you've started shooting at, it also gives us that opportunity to get that registered here and now as well. So range registrations will be accessible to anybody that has a club secretary role. Club super admin will be able to see it as well. And from memory, I think club membership secretary, that role should also allow this section to be seen. And like I said, this should really just be a bit of a sense check to go, is this all still in order? So you will have down on here your list of all your ranges that are current. If you've ever moved ranges before, you may have some lapsed registrations on as well, which have to stay on so that we have those audit trail of them. So with your current ones, you just come along and just have a click anywhere on the line for that registration, and it will open it all up for you. And then all it is a case of just having a click through all the different pages that are in here and just making sure, is that right? Has anything changed? Do I need to do any kind of updates, or is there nothing to worry about? And I would say for most people, you see, as we've gone through, that's going to be all fine, and there'll probably be nothing for you to worry about. If you do spot something that's a bit out of date though, chances are it's probably going to need us to be able to update it, but that's fine. If you drop us a line at the membership@archerygb.org email address, and tell us which range and which pieces of information need updating, we can do that relatively quickly to bring it up to date. What we're asking clubs to do as we're heading into the renewals period is anything that ties into renewals in any way, shape or form. If you include renewals in the subject line of your email, it's going to really help us prioritize those requests, because we're really looking to focus in on anything that is going to make renewals nice and smooth and stress-free for everybody. When you're done, you can just click save to come out of it, or you could just have clicked on range registrations to go back to it. So again, we just work through each one and make sure you're happy with what's in there. So I'll scooch back just a little bit. Now let's say that you do happen to have a new range that needs to be registered. This can be completed here. So as long as you've got the information, you should be able to do that nice and quickly. To register a range though, the first thing you need to do is come down to the addresses section here in the account. And what we need to do is we need to capture the address of, whether it's an indoor or an outdoor range before we can do the registration. So when you're in addresses, just come along to this blue actions button here and click it, and then it will let you choose what type of address you're registering. So we've got outdoor venue for your outdoor range, indoor for your indoor range. Postal address, that's another way to update the address that was showing on your profile page. So you could also do that here. And venue address, I'll come back to in a little bit. This is the address that drives the club finder. So whichever venue it might be, you can just click on the one you need. So we'll do one now. And it's exactly like the other one that we saw. So if we put in a postcode, and we'll get it to search. There we go. Where should we have it? Let's have it at Battleback today. Why not? Now, when you're putting an address, the only thing it doesn't pull out, because apparently the Royal Mail postcode finder has changed the way it works, and the only thing it doesn't pull out is county. So you will have to manually insert that before it will let you save it. But once you've got that in, you can click it there. And as you can see, I've now got a new outdoor venue here. Now, at the moment, my current outdoor range registration is over here, and this is what I've set as being my primary venue. But if I'm no longer using this one, and this is going to be my new main outdoor venue, then I can change this so that it shows as yes, and then it'll reflect it correctly. So I just come to actions, click on that button, and then click on make primary. And now it's obvious this is our main outdoor venue that I'm using. And I suppose if you happen to have several outdoor venues or several indoor venues that you switch between, it's just up to you as a club to decide which one do you want to mark as the primary one, and which one is left with that red no one. It doesn't necessarily I want to say it doesn't necessarily mean anything, as in it doesn't necessarily mean you use one more than the other. It's just that it could do with having a designator on it, because it just helps with other data feeds that go on behind the scenes, especially into the club finder that we've got there. But once you've got your venue added, you can come back to range registrations, and then you could click on the blue add range registration button. And it will open up a series of screens for you to have a good old click through. So the first thing it will ask you to do is to say, does your range comply with the rules of shooting? And I think for most people, it's normally a yes. I think if your range wasn't to comply, you've probably already been in touch with us, and we're probably already working out how we can assess that for you. So I'll work on the basis that we're doing a compliant one. And if you ever come across the other situation, then, you know, just get in touch with me. Once we've done that, that's the main bit done. And we can now just work on filling in all the other details. So making sure we select the right address. You'll see here it asks appear on Club Finder. Now, I'm not going to worry about this anymore, because once upon a time, this did used to drive what appeared on the Club Finder. But that's changed since this was in here. So I'm not worrying about it. I'm going to deal with my Club Finder later on. And then we just work our way through and just adding the information that's in here. And all of this is very much geared up for us just being able to understand what sort of facilities our clubs have available to them and are using. And the more data that we're able to have, we're hoping that could be really informative for us and just help us to understand as well where there might be perhaps areas where there's more support around facilities needed, and perhaps looking at if there's areas where there might be difficulties on facilities, you know, are there things we can do around that? Not all of the information you have to put in is mandatory, so feel free to just skip along to as you need. You don't have to pop everything in. I am going to say that my field is, here we go, we'll share it with football. And if you've got a few more, you can just go in and add them one by one. So we'll keep clicking along. We'll say we've got target archery. And then these questions are about just whether there are certain what we call minimum standards to where you're using. If it doesn't have them, that's fine. That's just a piece of information that it's giving us. It doesn't mean that there's an issue with the venue or with you using it as a range. So this is just purely again to give us that extra data. So I'll go a bit random on mine, and then we'll come along. There you go. So let's not shoot very far on here. There we go. We'll say that we hire it. And I'm going to say this one is very accessible. And then last but not least, it wants you to make sure that you've got your current risk assessment for it. But once you've done that, you can click add. And then once it finishes loading up, I will now have an extra range registration on the account, and the primary contact will receive a confirmation email to say that that range has been registered, and it will have a certificate with it as well, so that if that needs to be displayed at the club, that can be printed out and put up. Otherwise, it's just a case of keeping it safe for your records. So that's range registrations, a very sort of quick one. Do you have any questions on that while we're here, or shall I move on?
No, that's good for me.
That's good.
Yeah, fine,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So the last check that we ask people to make is, I've mentioned it a couple of times, it's to do with the club finder. So this is about whether your club is displayed on the club finder tool on our website and on our Start Archery website. It can be a great way for the general public to find you. But it's quite a personal choice for clubs to make. But it's hidden away here in the membership section. So where you can see your club membership, you just come and click on this green current button here, and it's going to open up These are all the screens you'll have filled in last year when the club renewal was done. And just down here, you can skip along to locator preferences. And if you're already displayed, fabulous. I would just have a little look and go, do you need to change any of the information that's displayed? So it can show up an email, and that can be whatever email address you as a club like to use for people. It doesn't have to be somebody's email address from their Sport 80 account. You know, if you've got one set up for inquiries, you can pop that in. Same with, you can choose to add a contact telephone number for the club if you want to. So let's go. So I'll pop one in there. And then if your club's got a website, you can also put that one in as well. So let's pop mine on. There we go. It's completely optional which ones you have showing. So again, whatever bits and pieces work for you, go with that. But once you've got that set, you can just click on the save button down at the bottom, and that will update the preferences. And then what happens after that is the Club Finder updates at 2 intervals during the 24-hour period. So 3 p.m. in the afternoon and 3 a.m. in the morning. So your updates will need to wait until the next data feed update takes place, and then it will get pulled through into the Club Finder and reflect under there. So that's always worth a mention, just in case you do it and then go, why is it still showing the old information? And that will just purely be why. Now that we've got we know whether we're appearing on the Club Finder and what information is going, the last thing we want to check is what address is the Club Finder going to use for your club. So when it's pulling you out on the map and people are searching, you know, what's within 10, 25, 50 miles of my postcode, you know, it's going to look at whatever your chosen address and postcode is to factor you into those searches. So we'll come back down to addresses. And as I mentioned just before, it's this venue address that it's going to base the search around. So if you don't have a venue address in at all, it will not be able to pull you into the Club Finder. So have a check, make sure there is one in there. If it needs to be changed at all, that's absolutely fine. What we can do is we could, let's click on our venue address here. And what we'll do is we'll have a look and just pop a different postcode in to search under. So let's get it to search under the one I used before. And we'll get it to find address. Let's pick one out. Again, luckily it's kept our county because we had already had this address filled in. And let's save it. So now, as you can see, the venue address is up to date. And yes, it recognizes that this is our primary one, which we also wanted to see. Now, if we'd wanted to, we could add, rather than doing it that way, we could go into actions and add another venue address. And then what you'd end up with is you'd end up with, you know, a few lines showing the different venue addresses you've used. So it is an alternative way to do it and will work just as fine. The key thing with it is just to make sure when you've got multiple venue addresses in, just make sure the right one is marked as the primary one. And again, to just change that setting, all you do is, if I do it on here, just click on those 3 dots and select make primary. And as long as you've got the right one in there, again, once those data feed updates take place, that will be your Club Finder updated and showing you all as being where you need to be on the map. So that's that one there. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I'm going to reappear. Brilliant. So that's a really kind of quick overview of the key things to have a check on. But doing those now will, like I said, it will mean that come next week, when you have to renew the club's affiliation, it will just be a case of being able to click along, and you won't have that pressure of trying to do the updates at the same time.